Hello and welcome to the lesson 3 of the CSS series. This lesson is about units and nested selectors. So let's start with nested selectors. They are basically one selector inside another selector. I'm not restricting to two. I'm just going to start with two selectors. So div inside box is one element inside another. List item inside the menu class is one element inside another. So let's get to action so we can understand it clearly. We have a box. A box is a div with the ID box, and inside this div we have another div. And we want to target the div inside the box element. So we are saying that all divs inside the ID box should be affected. Let's set width to 50 pixels, height to 50 pixels, and border 1 pixel solid black, and margin, just some margin. Okay, what are we doing here? We have a box, a larger box, and we are now saying that this div is going to be a smaller box inside this one. So let's see what happens in the screen. This is our box. If we refresh the page, this is the div inside the box ID because we set it in here. This might be a little confusing in the beginning, so let me give you another example. In here we have a span tag alone in the body, and here we have a span tag inside the P element, inside a paragraph, and we want to target only this span tag, and we don't want to target this one. We just want the one inside a P tag. So what do? We come here and say that all span tags inside a paragraph should have its color set to red. So the idea is that only the word alone becomes red and not this sentence. So we can see the magic happens. If we didn't use this nested selector, if you just set span to red, this would become red as well. So this is how we use nested selectors. We can have more than two. We can have a div in here. We can mix a class with elements. We can mix, as you saw here, an ID with elements or an ID with classes. You're not restricted to the kind of elements. You can just add as many selectors as you like. It is recommended that you don't specify more than 3 selectors at one time, because you usually don't need to be that specific. It's unlikely that we'll have more than one P inside a div inside a box. If so, we can be more specific, creating a class or something. But I think we got this covered. And now I want to talk about the second part of this lesson, that is the units. We've been using pixels for the whole lessons, and I want to introduce you to the other kinds of units that we are allowed to use. I'm gonna start with absolute units. We have pixels, centimeters, millimeters, inches, and points, and other kinds of units. But it's recommended that we use only pixels for web development. If you want to use an absolute unit, please use pixels. Okay? Pixels, they are absolute, as we just said. They don't change. Doesn't matter where we are. If we are in a desktop, in a smartphone, in a television, in a tablet, 200 pixels is always gonna be 200 pixels. The size of this box is gonna be the same no matter what device you are. Now we're gonna go to relative units. There we have a different point of view. Percentage is a unit that is related to the element you are or the parent. What is the parent? I'm gonna get there. So let's change the width of this box div to 100%. 100% is everything. Alright? So as you can see, the div, the ID box is now fitting the entire screen. Don't worry about the margins now, but why is it happening? It's not because the box, the 100% is related to the box. It is because 100% is related to the parent of the box. The parent of the box in our case is the body. And you know the body covers our entire screen. So 100% of the body is 100% of the screen. That's why our box is fitting the entire screen. Let me give you a different example so you can understand why am I talking about parents. Let's say that our box is gonna get back to 200 pixels. Let's make it a little larger. 500 pixels. Okay? 500 pixels, absolute unit. And we want our smaller div to have its size set to 50% of the box. So now we have a different parent. We have a defined width in our parent div that is the box for our div to relate to. This may be a little confusing, but 50% is 50% of those 500 pixels that is outside our div. So if I define this box to be 50%, it's gonna be 50%. Okay, let's remove the margins so you can see it more clearly. 50%, half the width. If I say it's 10%, it's 10% the width. 100% is gonna be 100% of our box, because our box is the parent of this element. In the same way that body is the parent of box, box is the parent of this div. So I hope you understood this, because you should be ready to move on to EMs. EMs are relative units that are equal to the size of the font. What's the size of the font? How do we know the size of the font? Well, there's two manners of knowing the size of the font. First of all, if we don't say anything, if we don't define anything, we will get the default font size from our browser. In this case, Google Chrome. Okay. Since we didn't set anything, the default font size of this p tag is probably 16 pixels. But if we set 18, then we would be defining. So 1 EM is gonna be it's gonna be 16 pixels in our Chrome browser. Let me show you one example then. We want to add some text in here. Font size equals to 20 pixels. And we're gonna add here cool text. So, okay, we have cool text here, 20 pixels, shining. Let's center it. No, let's not center it. Let's be more specific. Let's add a margin. I want to set a margin to this text, sorry, to this div. Okay, I want this div to be positioned using the font size. So I'm gonna say that I want 1 EM. 1 EM in this div is gonna be 20 pixels. Okay, so let's change the width of the div to 50%, and here we have a margin of 1 EM. What's 1 EM? This margin here is equivalent to 20 pixels. You know how is it equivalent to 20 pixels? Because if I change the font size here, the margin size is also gonna increase or decrease. So, sorry, if I double the font size, the margin should double as well. And it does, because that's how EM works. So why do we use EMs instead of pixels? Why am I showing you this? Now that we have many different kinds of devices, such as smartphones, tablets, and endless brands or kinds of devices, we have different kinds of screens. And these screens may need a different font size and different margins and different alignments depending on the size of its screen. So if I define a box with 500 pixels in our desktop, it's good, it's excellent. But imagine a smartphone that have 380 pixels wide. This box is not gonna fit. So it's better for us to use a relative unit so that that box would fit the screen in our browser. This is called responsive design, and really, like, after some really good lessons, we're gonna get there and you're gonna see how to design a project that fits your desktop and fits as well as your tablet and smartphone. I think that's it for this lesson. Maybe it took too long, so thank you very much for watching. I hope I was clear. I hope you could have learned something from this lesson. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.